Well, welcome again to today's webinar with Oracle University. My name is Gretchen Buellin, and I'm part of the Cloud Education team. I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Susan Korbey. Susan is our Sales Consulting Director and brings a wealth of experience in the IT and education industry. She's worked for many years with Oracle's customers to develop successful adoption plans for Oracle technologies and solutions. And now, with cloud technology at the forefront, Susan and her team advise businesses in their journey to embrace the cloud at each stage. She has a great presentation prepared for you today on our guided learning solution. So without further delay, here is Susan Korbey.
Thank you so much, Gretchen, and thank you everybody for joining today. We're very excited to have you here and very excited to talk about how you can accelerate your cloud adoption with Oracle's guided learning solution. And what we want to bring to the forefront today is really talking about how do we put modern learning in front of our modern learners. So the title today of the webinar is focusing on accelerating your cloud adoption, but we're also going to focus on modern learning for the modern learner. All right. My name is Susan Korbey, and as Gretchen said, I'm the Director of Solutions Consulting with Oracle University. I encourage anybody on the webinar today, please go ahead and connect with me. Either follow me on Twitter or connect with me on LinkedIn. Oracle University and our Solutions Consulting team in general are spending a lot of time doing a lot of research, and we're providing a lot of thought leadership around these topics around modern learning and how do we accelerate learning in the cloud. So I welcome any connections, and I want to hear from you and understand more about how you're doing modern learning, but also to be able to share with you some of the things that we're finding in the space as well. One of the things that I spend a lot of time talking about with our customers is why is employee education important to a cloud adoption strategy? So when we think about how do we accelerate adoption in the cloud, we want to talk about and understand some of the key components of making sure that our employees understand what it is that they're doing in the cloud, because that's really all about adoption. But as we think about it, and I start talking with customers, we talk about other components as well, besides just the actual knowing how to do the clicks, right? That's critically important for our customers and our employees to be able to understand how to navigate and use the system. So that they can get the adoption, so that they can go through it. But it also has some other resounding effects. And some of those are things like employee satisfaction. In fact, studies out there show that when employees feel empowered and know what they're doing and can feel confident in their job, that their satisfaction increases and their likelihood of staying with an organization is much increased and improved. Developing a culture of learning is also very important. And when we talk about developing a culture of learning, I can reference back to some of the key topics that we're starting to see that are coming up in the learning and enablement space, and how do we accelerate the adoption. And one of the biggest drivers of business impact these days is that a company has a culture of learning. So when we put employee education and enablement and learning up front as part of our adoption strategy, we can help to foster this culture of learning. It helps you achieve a competitive advantage. When your employees have an understanding of how to do their jobs, they know how to do it to the best that they can, they're productive with the solutions that you're implementing, they're proficient with them, and they can focus on what's important, which is innovating, rather than just trying to run the systems. You can achieve a competitive advantage and get the return on investment that you were seeking when you purchased the solutions in the first place. It also allows your employees to be able to embrace new technology. So as they go through and they're confident in the systems, and we've got an adoption strategy in place, and we've fostered a culture of learning and enablement, they can go in and feel confident that they can embrace new technologies that are also going to circle back and achieve to that competitive advantage. We've mentioned productivity as well. If those pieces aren't enough, though, when we start talking about it, we want to take a look at some statistics that are out there. And what we know is that comprehensively trained organizations are 80% faster to adopt the cloud. Now, there's some statistics here that show trained skilled workforce and untrained or an average skilled workforce. And one of the things that I get from customers is a question a lot is, well, what's a trained or a skilled workforce versus one that's untrained? The statistics out there suggest that employees that receive at least 10 hours worth of training or enablement or learning opportunities per year will constitute a trained workforce. But it also depends on the culture that you have within your organization, the amount of change that you're integrating into your organization itself that may vary that upwards or downwards. But that's really what we're talking about, is at least providing them with the opportunity to understand not only the solutions that are being implemented, but the process changes and the policy changes. When we look at these statistics, though, essentially what we're looking at is there's three key things that have to happen when you implement a new cloud solution. One, the solution itself has to be able to be stood up and you have to meet your project milestones, right? If you're starting to go over budget, over timeline, that can create significant issues for the ROI that you're actually seeking. So this first pillar, if you look at it, cloud migration project milestones are met. When your core teams are trained appropriately to work effectively with your SIs and they have those skills that they need to be able to make decisions quickly and be able to make accurate decisions on how to implement the solution itself, 90% more 90% of the customers surveyed actually met their project milestones versus just 50% of those that didn't embark in any kind of a training or learning and enablement program. The second piece is you have to make sure that there is effective process integration with the cloud solution that you're moving to. And so what this means is that your teams actually have to understand how the processes are working and how business is done now as a result of moving into the new system. And also, how can we integrate it back in? And again, now we're still talking about your core team and the business leads that are working to get this stood up. But when we talk about effectively integrating your existing processes or making changes to those processes to adapt to the SaaS solution, 79% of our customers were able to do that with a trained, skilled workforce versus 45% when they didn't embark in training. The last pillar here, though, is what we're going to focus on today. And we're going to focus on the speed and the ability for the users to actually adopt the solution and the new functionality that's being brought forth. Because you can have even the best solution that's implemented. It can be configured to immediately drive business productivity from your users. But if your users don't adopt that solution, they don't actually use it, or they don't use it to the best of their ability, then it's not as effective as it could be. So adoption is absolutely critical. So what we found is in the studies show that when you have a trained or skilled workforce, and now we're talking about your end users that actually can know how to use that system, 82% adoption, much better than just 60% with an untrained workforce. So if those statistics didn't get to you, let's talk a little bit more about what modern learning comes from. Because those statistics are really specific to just kind of general customers and bringing things on board. And in fact, they could even apply to, traditional projects as we're going through them. But one of the things that we have to take a look at as well is the dynamics and the change in our workforces that are happening. So it's not just about making sure that we are facilitating a culture of learning, but it's also about addressing the way that people learn. In fact, in a recent keynote study or a keynote speech by Josh Bergen at LinkedIn, one of the things that they talk about is this whole fluctuation of change. So we are in another pivotal point where we're moving from just digital learning in the learning environment to actually learning more in the flow of work. And this is accommodating this new workforce that's coming in, the modern learner. I did a session out at Modern Business Experience recently, and we were talking about the fact that by 2020, 50% of the workforce is going to be millennials. That means anybody born 1986 or after will be a large population of our workforce. And they actually learn very differently. They are the modern learner. They are impatient. They're tech savvy. They don't know a time before the internet. They have grown up with cell phones in their hands and that technology, and they're comfortable with it. They are disruptive, and they are on the go. And they learn in a very different way than most of us who maybe are prior to that generation learn. 52% of them learn as a point of need, meaning that they prefer to learn just as they're going to need it versus sitting down through a long class, digesting it, getting that. They want to get that piece of it just as they need it in their flow of work. 47% of them learn on evenings and weekends. 30% learn only when they're updated and alerted. So if you think about this in terms of, you get that push notification that says you need to be able to take this class, or you need to learn how to do this in some certain way. 27% of them actually learn on their way to work. And that's during commute times and what they're doing, but they're on the go, they're mobile, they're learning on their own devices. So when we think about these modern learners and we think about the need for enabling in the new cloud world, we have to pull these two things together to help continue to drive employee satisfaction. But we have to incorporate things like the new face of learning in the top industry trends as well. So when we stop and we look at this, there's some key things that are really coming into the forefront. Social and collaboration are particularly important to most learners now. And in fact, we see that social learning and the ability to collaborate is one of the key foundations of an enablement strategy. They want to be able to work together, to be able to collaborate together, to review and comment, and they want to work as a cohort. But it also has to be able to be mobile. They have to be able to do it in a way that doesn't tie them to their desks, that allows them to have easy 24/7 access that's cloud-based. Gamification is also another trend that is coming to play, and it's one that's been particularly interesting to watch. So as I was coming on board and starting to look more and more in terms of the digital phenomenon, I started working a little bit with my 14-year-old daughter just to really understand how she views the world and how she sees things. And she and her peers are very much about learning mobily. They want to make sure that they can just grab it very quickly. She learns everything off of YouTube. But at the same time, they also like to be able to go in and earn those badges, and they compete with each other. And I found this particularly interesting because you would generally think that it is just the kids and the younger generation that want to do that gamification. But as I started talking to many of our customers and we started focusing on what their employees were doing, they are also finding that even their adult learners like gamification. They like digital badging. They like to earn points, and they like to compete against each other. And even more importantly, when they look at it, that gamification itself doesn't split boundaries. It is really just male and female equally in there competing and looking at it. So we have to be able to not only take a look at how do we create a culture of learning that provides learning in the flow of work, that accommodates these new modern learners that are coming into our workforce. And again, 50% of the workforce by 2020 will be these millennials, these modern learners. And they're going to overtake the workforce by 2030 with an estimated population of about 76%. So as we're starting to think about our enablement strategies, we really have to start building that in. And then also looking at things like social and collaboration, mobile, cloud-based, 24/7 access, gamification. So how do you do that? How do you get faster cloud adoption and employee satisfaction by marrying and pulling all of these things together. Well, really, learning needs to be more like this. So I spend a lot of time talking to customers, but also doing a lot of research and also just working with some industry folks. And what we're finding is that the concept of, sitting in longer 3 to 5 day classes is really something that's being held only for our core teams. So if you think back to that pillar slide where we were talking about the different areas, our core teams that are doing the implementation still have a need for that structured in-class training. But when we talk about adoption and we talk about our users, this is where the trend is moving to. And so just like you have your Google Maps, we need to be able to have a way to provide that type of enablement for our users as well. And in fact, they're seeking that. This is where Oracle University's guided learning comes in. So Oracle University guided learning is in-application guidance that is specifically designed to help accelerate your cloud SaaS enablement. So users actually get the enablement that they need at the point in time that they need it and in the flow of work as they're doing it. So what you'll see, and we're going to go into a demo in a little bit, but one of the things that I want to walk you through is some of the key elements of guided learning, and you'll see that it happens directly within that application. It gives them immediate productivity from day one. And we'll talk about how it can be used not only to orient your users to a new solution as you go live, but also as you're onboarding new users. It'll give them task-based assistance. It gives them the ability to have task lists that guide them through complex processes. It gives them step-by-step guides on how to do a particular process or task within the system. But it also allows us then to also tie in that process and policy pieces that are critical to the enablement portion of using a new solution. So let me just give you a brief description of what that would be. If we think about it in terms of changing processes or policies, oftentimes here at Oracle, we have adjustments to our expenses policy. So, maybe I have to submit a receipt up to a certain dollar level, or I have to now go in and itemize based on, my lodging. These things change and they adjust. And we often get emails about them, and I can tell you we get a lot of emails. And those emails often go by the wayside, and sometimes they get deleted. Sometimes they get read and filed, and it's difficult to go in and look for them. So with the ability to be able to tie in not only the clicks and the steps in the system, but integrate policy changes and communicate those policy changes to my users directly from within the system right at that point of need, I can help to reduce the overall cost associated with using the system in a couple of ways. One, my users are more productive because they're not stopping and having to go look for that email that explains what that policy change was. They're not over here asking questions of their peers and their counterparts and losing precious time as they're doing it. And it really allows them to be able to continue with their work so that they can continue to innovate and get that return on investment that you're seeking from your cloud solutions. One of the things that folks will always ask me is, well, we've configured this specifically, we've configured our cloud solutions. So how does guided learning work with that? We start with a set of base user guides, and these are modern best practices of tasks that happen within the system. And so we come with this fully formed library that we can start from. And then we work with our customers to understand how they've configured their system, where policies and procedures need to be incorporated, where we maybe need to embed some additional training. And we can configure it and personalize it specifically for your implementation. The great thing about guided learning is that it is a managed and hosted service by Oracle University, which means that as you go through these quarterly updates, we also go in and manage and maintain those updates for you. So where you would normally have to think about, how do I communicate changes in the system to my users as they're happening? How do I make sure that my users understand what some of these changes are or policy changes? And you would have to develop and maintain and deliver that to your users. Because guided learning happens in the system and it's managed and maintained by Oracle University, we actually do those updates for you. All right. Because a picture is worth 1,000 words and a demo is worth even more, let's go ahead and just quickly jump in and let me show you what guided learning looks like in action. So, Gretchen, while I get everything started up here, can you tell me, did we have any questions in chat through that part of it? Is there any questions that can be answered now before we get started?
One question here, Susan, about the stage of implementation. At what stage can or should guided learning be incorporated in a project?
Oh, it's a great question. So because guided learning is really focused on the end users, we want to make sure that we have kind of defined what those end users are going to be doing before we start personalizing and configuring guided learning for them. So where we really find that our customers are achieving value is that we do it as we're have a stable system that's been configured and set up, and then we're getting ready to go live. Now, what we've also seen, though, is that our customers have also been using guided learning in their user acceptance testing phase. So if you think about it, when you do UAT or user acceptance testing, oftentimes what happens is you're given test scripts. Well, that's still look-away training. So you have to look down and figure out what that test script says, and then you've got to go find it on the screen. And for those of you that have gone through any kind of an implementation project before, test scripts are not always created equally. So some are better than others. Some are very descriptive. Others are not. And so when you have guided learning as a part of your user acceptance testing process, you can actually accelerate and improve the quality of your UAT and have it ready, and then everything is set before go live. So I would say, just to recap, we want to make sure that there's a stable system. We've got it kind of configured. Probably just prior to user acceptance testing is a great point to deploy guided learning.
Okay, and no further at this time.
Okay, great. Thanks. Well, let's get started. So this is guided learning at the very first start of it. Let me just reiterate, I am in a live demo environment, which means this is a live application. So I am not in a simulation. I am not in a test environment. I'm not in a training environment. This is configured to be able to work with your production environment so that your users can be productive in it on day one. So I'm logged in as Robert Jackman. And Robert Jackman is a senior leader within the HCM organization at Vision Corporation. So Robert logged in for the very first time. This is either a go live or he's a new joiner to the organization. So let's take the new joiner because there's a couple of things that we can show. But know that this is also really effective for people who are just going live. So when we first log in, oftentimes we don't know where we need to start going. And so in a traditional model, so you would often do some form of navigation training. You would either provide job aids, you would likely do a webinar training session for people, or have some kind of a recording where your users would go through and learn how to navigate the new systems that they're going to be working in. And with this, with guided learning, you can actually alleviate that step, and you can push that out, let people know that they don't need to be worried when they log in for the first time because guided learning is going to be there. In fact, we've recently done that here at Oracle where we launched some new modules. And so it's not even, your very first go live with the system. It's not even new joiners, but even if you're launching new functionality where we've put guided learning in place to be able to help orient people to not only what the system is and the navigation, but also the benefits that it's going to bring to them. So you can see Robert is presented with Welcome to the Oracle Cloud, and I'm going to go ahead and just start this. This is an actual video player that we've embedded directly in here. You can see that he's provided with some information about here's the Oracle Cloud, click on the Guide Me button, and you can watch this video as well. This is just standard content that we've pulled in, but if you can imagine, this could actually be a video from, say, the VP of HR welcoming everybody in to their new system or welcoming the new joiner to the company and providing them with some insights. It's a fully functioning viewer, so we can go full screen, we can do closed captioning, pause, forward, rewind, everything that you would see. And we have seen our customers do a couple of different things with this. So they go in and they have that kind of welcome orientation from a senior leader that provides the context of why they're moving to the new system. We've seen them overview a process. You could put a smart graphic in here as well. It doesn't have to be a video. But our ability to be able to embed rich media and content directly here at that point of need is really what helps to facilitate that onboarding process or that shift to the new system. It's fully configurable as well. So we have Remind Me Later here. If you decided you didn't want to watch that right now, you can say Remind Me Later. I can close out of it completely, or I can choose to be guided. And all of this is configurable. I can remove the Remind Me Later. I can remove the X. I can only leave the Guide Me and force them to do that, because you'll notice I can't click anywhere else on the screen until I interact with guided learning. That's also configurable as well, and I'll show you a couple of instances of that. I'm going to choose Guide Me, though, just so that I can get my basic orientation. And you'll see this is a fairly short navigation guide, but it takes Robert through the key components of the application and is explaining to him where there's going to be certain aspects that he'll need to interact with within the solution. And then lastly, it provides them with information on the guided learning widget. So this is where you get your task list that includes your process flows for your specific role. And so guided learning will just sit here over on the side. It's fairly innocuous, doesn't get in the way. Again, though, it's configurable. We can move that widget around on the screen as well. And so Robert now knows where his key stuff is within the system. He's got his navigation, but now he actually has to start doing some work. And so he's been, as a new joiner to the organization, he's been told that there's some onboarding stuff that he'll need to accomplish, but also at the same time, he needs to go in and complete some regular tasks that he has. So let me just give you a view of what the widget looks like. So the widget opens up, and we have the ability to be able to show a couple of different things within the widget. What's really important to note here is that what a user sees within their widget is based on their role. So Robert, as a senior leader and a manager, will see different tasks than would some of his subordinates who may be individual contributors. So as an individual contributor, you wouldn't manage time cards, you wouldn't approve anything. But Robert would have those tasks that are available to him because it reads his role and his security permissions. So role-based, specific to what he needs to see. Now, we have the ability to incorporate task lists, and I'll show you what that is in just a minute. But it's a way to be able to help guide users through fairly complex processes. So, for example, we are going to talk about new employee orientation, and Robert, as a new employee, needs to go through a variety of different things, both in the system and outside of the system. But if we did have new employee orientation, we could also have other components of it. So, for example, we have one customer who has a fairly complex offboarding process. So when an employee either terminates voluntarily or involuntarily, there's a large number of steps that have to be executed. It's over 30 steps that are required. And some of those happen within the system, and some of those happen outside of the system. And we can create a task list for that, because that helps to ensure accuracy and adherence to the policies and procedures. This is especially important in those organizations that are regulated. If you think about healthcare or any of the other industries that have specific policies and processes that are regulated that they have to follow, this helps to ensure that accuracy. But if we look at the task list, you can see Robert clicked on that task list. Here's his new employee orientation, and he is now presented with a series of steps of things he needs to do. And again, this can be inside the system, but it can also be things that take him outside of the system. So maybe it's email accounting to let them know that you've now joined. In this case, we start off with you need to take some of your specific training. And you'll notice that you complete this training in the LMS. So if I were to click on product development, this is going to take me outside of the application, drop me into the training that I need to do. In this case, we're taking it to Oracle's Launchpad. Once I complete that, I can come right back in, take my next training, take my next, and when I click done, I'm now done, and it documents it for me. New employee orientation, that's the next piece of it. So now you can see here's some more guidance on what we need to do. So you've got to sign up for this, but there's some other pieces in here. We need to do the I-9 verification. Here's how you would do this. Watch this welcome video from our HR leader. It's fully configurable to how you onboard your employees. When we click done, it then registers that. We can also have them do things directly within the system. So electing your benefits is one of the first things that you do when you onboard. And Robert may not have any idea how to actually do that in the system. So rather than giving him a separate email with instructions that require look away, we have the ability to just direct him and guide him right there within the system at the point of need and in his flow of work. So I'm not going to go through this because I'm going to show you task-based assistance in just a minute, but you can see that it'll actually guide him through how to go in and elect his benefits. Okay, I didn't complete it, so it doesn't show me as completed. The last piece is sometimes we have different things that our users need to actually accept and attest to, and so we can actually incorporate that directly from within here. So I can even put this form that they can go in and they can check, and we can work within it directly. I'm not going to go in and submit this because, again, it's a demo environment. I want everybody to be able to. But you can see that directly from within that practice or within the process, we can have this do that. Okay, those are task lists. So, again, great use cases for it, employee onboarding, offboarding, being able to control any kind of a detailed or complex process to provide guidance, especially in those organizations that are regulated or require a certain amount of accuracy. Another use case that we have for task lists that we often see is things like month-end close. So if you're in the ERP side of the house, month-end close can sometimes be a process that has multiple steps that have to happen both within the system and without. And then from that standpoint, really make sure that we are doing that accurately to be able to accelerate that adoption. Okay, so Robert has completed his onboarding task, his new employee orientation, or has at least started it. So now we'll go back over to the guided learning because he knows he has some extra work that he needs to do. We always keep the navigation here available to Robert, so if he needed to go back and review that, he certainly could. But you can see that we've also supplied him with some relevant documents that he might want to read and have access to easily. I know here at Oracle, we have an expansive intranet and a wide variety of places that we could go to get information. And while a lot of it is centralized, some of it takes several clicks to be able to get to. And it would be nice to always have a link to some of the relevant information that is here. So, for example, I can link to my travel and expense policy if I needed to go in and view that directly. So that's directly from within the application, right there, easy to view, and then when I'm done, I simply come back. All right. It's also searchable. So, for example, if I go into absence, Robert maybe took a day or is getting ready to go in and take a couple of days. And so from that standpoint, he needs to submit an absence request. And that may not be something that he's done yet, and it may be something that he would like to have that step-by-step guidance for. Now, if you think back to the Google Maps scenario, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is Google Maps for your cloud adoption. And what's nice about this is a lot of our users, we find when we talk to our customers and when we even do it internally here at Oracle, actually use guided learning even when they know what it is that they're supposed to be doing, just simply to make sure that they're doing it accurately, because it's non-intrusive. It is here, but it's also configurable again. So if I wanted to turn this off, I certainly could. So I could just click that there. If Robert thought that he knew what he was doing and got to a certain point but got lost, it's also context sensitive. So you can see that I can submit the absence request and it'll start my guidance from where I am on the screen. I specifically chose the add an absence, though, because add an absence is a little bit intuitive. And one of the things that a lot of our customers will say is, well, you know, you guys have done a great job. You've built your apps. They're fairly intuitive. Users can get through this. Why do we need to have guided learning? Well, guided learning is not just about the clicks. So if you recall, we talk about the ability to integrate policy and process information. I specifically chose this one because there's a couple of other instances where this comes up. Again, configurable to be able to add. So click on Add an Absence. We can actually suggest that people review the vacation and absence policy before they go in and submit their absences. We can make it available directly within here. If I click on this, it just opens up that same absence policy. So we have the ability to be able to incorporate that. But we can also incorporate other components of it. So, for example, Robert's actually getting ready to go take a vacation. But if he was going to do something like, say, take sick time, we could actually communicate policy or process information directly within the system based on what he chose. So, for example, here at Oracle, if you take more than a certain number of days of sick time, we have to actually process things in a different way than if it's just a day or two. And so we could incorporate that directly within the system to make sure that they're adhering to that process and policy. But for this, I'm going to continue on. Robert's just taking his vacation time, so you can see that we're providing him with step-based guidance. He's going to take next Monday off. He'll choose that. And click OK. He'll be returning on the 7th. We'll choose that. And you can see that as we go through, it's guiding him step by step on what he needs to do. So it has him confirm the duration of the absence. You can see his balance right there. Add any additional comments or supporting documentation if that's a requirement. And now it's having him submit the request. Now, this, because we're in a demo environment, I'm going to have it force me to hit cancel. And that's how we've designed this specifically. But it goes to be able to highlight how you can control and guide users to what they need to do. So in this particular instance, I want to make sure that people are clicking cancel. And so we've actually controlled it that that's what they need to click on. So again, completely configurable to your processes and how you do things. Okay. So I'm now alerted that my absence request has been submitted. I will click Done, and Robert has finished up his task-based instance. Now, this pops up each time we refresh the screen. Again, that's how we have it configured. Again, completely controllable as well. Okay. A couple of other things that we can show. The promoting a worker. That's a fun thing to get to do. And it's not something that a lot of people do often. And so maybe we need to be able to have that guidance as we go through. If you think about it in terms of where guided learning is a great fit, it's a great fit for users that are new to the system, users that are coming in and doing things that are infrequent, processes and tasks where there could be policy or procedural changes that are happening and you want to make sure that you guide and direct that, or provide at point in time information. So, for example, in some cases, we've had folks that have used it to be able to provide information about what they need to enter in a particular field as they're going through. All right. So at this point, we're going to promote Guy Matrand. And so we want to be able to put information here. We can put additional context and information as it goes through here. For now, we're just going to manage the salary. Click on Continue. All right. So it gives me information. So I'm going to select the date. We're going to start that now. I'm going to select the reason, and we're going to call it Performance. I'll click Next. Tells me to continue. And it takes me through the different steps. So use the promotion section. Okay, that's good. At any point in time, though, if I have different things that need to happen, I can also go through and point that out. So, for example, before I do a salary promotion, I may need to contact somebody in HR. So we could have put that information directly here as well. So you can see as we continue to go through, the task-based guidance takes you through what you need to do as you do it. We also have the ability to communicate directly with users if they're not using guided learning. So there's the ability to apply things called smart tips, which are small icons and beacons that will alert users to new information that's coming through, or perhaps a policy change. So again, if my expense policy changes, when they go into the expense page, I can have something that alerts the user, even if they're not using the Google Maps guidance, that tells them about a policy change. And we can push communication similar to having the welcome show up every time they log in or the first time that they log in. We can push communication. So, for example, if Robert's been an employee for 6 months and there is some foundational change, we can set up a push communication so that when he logs in on 6 months and a day, that communicates to him, hey, you know what? Benefit elections is coming up. It's time for you to go in and elect your benefits. Start now. So, again, a variety of different ways that we can do this. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop and take a pause. Gretchen, are there any questions that we need to address?
Yes, there are some questions. I'll start here.
Okay.
Do you need to have OLC implemented to use guided learning?
Okay, so I'm going to assume that by OLC we mean Oracle Learning Cloud.
Okay. Yep.
And Oracle Learning Cloud is a cloud-based service that provides the infrastructure for you to be able to load your learning content. The answer is no, that there is no requirement that you have to have Learning Cloud for guided learning to be implemented. I will say, though, that it is a complementary solution to Learning Cloud. So, for example, if you had put content into Learning Cloud that people needed to see, you could embed that into some of the guides. But you can also provide guided learning for Learning Cloud. So, for example, Robert has view a course from the course catalog, and that's actually Learning Cloud content. So you can see that I can use guided learning to help instruct and guide my users in what they need to do to be able to use Learning Cloud.
Okay. The next question is around system security. Does guided learning use security that's already embedded in Oracle Cloud, or does it require a separate setup?
It uses the profile and security settings that are in the cloud application. So that's how we read that.
Okay.
Before we go on, I just want to show an example of, we talked about what a beacon was. So you saw that red flashing here. There was one right here. So this is our ability to be able to notify folks that the learning page has been updated to provide you click here to view more information on the changes, and just a way to be able to communicate, again, with users that are in the system at that point of need. Okay, what else, Gretchen?
Okay. There's another question here. Is this a separate product that needs to be implemented? Also wondering if we can customize this to reflect system capabilities in place.
Okay, so to answer the first one, yes, it's a separate, I'm going to, rather than call it a product, I'm going to call it a service and solution. There is the guided learning solution that's provided by Oracle University. So it is a separate implementation through Oracle University. It comes with the base guides, and then we work with you to tailor and configure those and get it implemented in your system. So it is separate. Then can we customize it to reflect system capabilities in place? Yes. So assuming that you've got certain things that are set up, we would start with a base guide for a particular task or flow, and then we can configure that to how you have it set in your system. And we can then go in and add the process and policy information as necessary as well. If you also need task-based assistance on a guide that is not already available in our library, we'll work with you and we'll create a new one for you.
Okay. And another question here, is reporting available, and does management have the ability to see completed processes or tasks?
Yes, we do have analytics that are available that we can provide to our customers in terms of reporting, and it reports on the overall usage of guided learning. What are the top guides that are being accessed? What are guides that are being maybe started but then not completed because people understand then what they need to do? Maybe they're being started halfway. So we can actually go in and view that and provide that information. So that helps to be able to not only improve the use of guided learning, but we can identify particular potential areas where maybe some additional enablement is necessary beyond even just the guided learning component. So what I'll do is let's go back over to the presentation. So with that, let's just quickly recap while folks are maybe thinking about some questions that they have. So the key benefits for guided learning is really all about mitigating risk and accelerating adoption. So it allows your users to be productive from day one. It eliminates that ramp-up time because the moment they log in or the moment they join the organization, guided learning is there to provide them with that guidance as they go through. It allows you to move to future Oracle updates quickly because it decreases that time to learn new features. It also decreases the time associated with going in and maintaining and updating regular training content that then has to be deployed back out. Because it's managed and maintained by Oracle University, we work with you on your update schedule to do the updates so that they go through. It allows you to easily onboard your new hires. So if people come into the system, it's there for them so that you don't have to do all these one-off training sessions. You know, when you go live, it's usually easy to pull everybody together, get everybody on board, and get them oriented. But then what happens when new people join? And how do you manage that? With guided learning, it is there. One of the things that it does, though, and we haven't really talked much about it, but it reduces help desk and user support requests. And I alluded to this at the very beginning. But if you think about it, there is a true impact to the business of people calling into a help desk, how do I log in, calling the subject matter expert or even their manager and saying, how do I do this? If you're running a level 1 help desk, there are really hard costs associated with that in terms of folks that are staffing it. But if you have what we call kind of the more informal support happening, where it's calling your manager or asking a peer or a coworker, how do I do something? Those costs results can actually be significant if you do the math out. And a real quick example that I always use is, let's assume you have 1,000 people going live on a system. And it's reasonable to think that in that, everybody might have one question in how to do something. And if they ask a question, it's probably 5 minutes worth of time. But the problem is it's not 5 minutes worth of time. It's actually 10 minutes worth of time. And because I'm asking somebody else and I'm taking their 5 minutes away. But if we make that even more conservative and we say, you know what, only 3/4 of the population is going to have a question. And so that's 750 people. It's taking 10 minutes worth of time. When you factor that into hours, we end up with over 130 hours, I think is the math, how it works out, of lost productivity by people just having one question that took 5 minutes and they asked their person next to them. So if you think about that in terms of a full-time equivalent and the productivity loss associated with that, it can be significant, especially when we're talking about larger and larger audiences. It helps you to have more predictable adoption budgets because it's managed and maintained service by Oracle University. And it increases user engagement because we are providing them with the enablement that they need at that point of need and in the flow of their work. All right. With that, Gretchen, I'd like to just leave this slide up. This is what some of our customers are saying about guided learning and how it's benefited them. But I'd like to see, did any other questions come in that we can answer in our last couple of minutes?
So the last question I think you just addressed there. It was about the challenges of rolled out functionalities and peak volume of questions to the help support desk. So I think that you addressed that, hopefully, for this attendee. Thank you.
Yeah.
And again, if anyone has additional questions, please continue to put them in the chat. We will check them after the session ends and reply for sure to anything else that comes in.
Okay. Well, with that then, I want to take a moment just to thank everybody for your participation today, for the questions. They were fantastic. If we didn't answer your question live, like Gretchen said, we'll make sure to get back to you individually to get you your answers. Please feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn. I've seen a couple of requests already come through. I'm assuming they're from the audience today. We want to continue the dialogue. We want to continue the discussion. And please let us know how we can help in terms of making your enablement program successful. You can reach out to me directly. You can work with your Oracle University folks as well. Thank you all very much and have a great day.